So hopefully you're all in the right place and are expecting to join a webinar today on reducing food waste from insight to action. So a big thank you to the team at the FDF for putting on this event in Food Waste Action Week. And a massive thank you to GS1 and Cranswick for joining us in this webinar to talk about some innovative things happening in the industry. So you're going to hear from a few people over the course of the next 45 minutes or so with some question and time at the end. We'll each introduce ourselves at the start of the content we're going to share. So I won't steal anybody's thunder now, but I will hand over to Natalie from the FDF to set the scene and kick us off. So Natalie, over to you.
Thank you, Judith. Hi, everyone. Great to see lots of people on the call today. Really excited about this webinar on reducing food waste for Food Waste Action Week. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Natalie Werner. I'm FDF's food waste lead. And we hope you find the content useful today. Thank you very much to our professional affiliate members, Argon & Co. We're really excited to hear about your insights today and from all the panelists, and also to GS1 UK and Cranswick, who will also be speaking. I just want to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll have a Q&A at the end, as Judith mentioned. So please put any questions you have into the Q&A tab on the panel, and we'll do our best to go through as many as we can at the end of the webinar. We'll also be doing a few polls today, so please do put your answer in when they pop up on the screen. And then following the webinar, we'll be sending you an aftercare email in the next couple of working days. And this will contain a recording of the webinar, a copy of the slides, and contact details of today's presentation. If I could have the next slide. Thank you. So just a very brief introduction for me, just to set the scene. Really excited about today's webinar. I'm sure that the webinar will be especially helpful for our food and drink manufacturers watching especially, and all of you. Food waste is one of the 5 pillars of our Ambition 2030 programme, which is the sustainability strategy for food and drink manufacturers. So you can see the 5 pillars on the screen there. One of them is food waste, and we have an ambition which we've aligned with the UK Food and Drink Pact and UN Sustainable Development Goal to halve food waste per capita by 2030. If I could have the next slide. So each of these pillars have a maturity curve, which you can see the food waste one on the screen, and that enables our members to meet the ambition where they are in progress as well. It also helps us see FDF's role, what support our members need to unlock barriers and opportunities, and also who we should work with on this. So I'm really pleased to work with Argon & Co on this webinar for Food Waste Action Week, which I'm sure will help our members on this journey. Thanks very much. I think I'm passing back to Judith now.
Great, thank you, Natalie. So once again, thank you all for joining. We're all here today because we recognise the scale of food waste and the importance to tackle it, but some of the challenges in doing so. So hopefully, whether you're at the start of the journey or slightly more advanced, today is going to offer some new perspectives on some pragmatic approaches and some of those best practices, as well as some innovative approaches in industry. So just to let you know, my name is Judith Richardson. I lead the food and drink practice here in the UK branch of Argon & Co. And my background's in the end-to-end supply chain, including grocery retail and food manufacturing businesses, as well as working with clients in other sectors too, with specific projects in manufacturing organisations around planning, forecasting, supply collaboration and operational excellence, as well as surplus redistribution. So why have we titled this webinar From Insight to Action? So clearly, we know what we need to tackle, and that there are traditional ways to get after this, as well as innovative approaches coming in industry, better harnessing rich data, leading to action. So that's why we've designed it in this way to feature different kinds of voices. So to kick us off as Argon & Co, for those who don't know us, we're a global management consultancy specialising in operations strategy and transformation, working around the world, growing fast, and we're delighted to be recognised for our technical expertise and operational experience in helping our clients. So when we say operations strategy and transformation, just to unpack that a bit, for us this means everything across the end-to-end supply chain, helping organisations set out where they want to go, delivering the change through their different functional areas, underpinned by strong project and change management capabilities. Working with some fantastic organisations like the ones you see on the slide. Maybe there's even some representatives from these organisations here today. But hopefully this illustrates that we work extensively with FMCG companies across the food and drink supply chain. So to the matter at hand, food waste in a few numbers. So in the UK, according to some figures that were reaffirmed by WRAP last year, we create roughly 10.2 million tonnes of food waste in the UK. The majority is in households, but all sectors, all elements of the value chain contribute to this, with around 13% coming from manufacturing. And even though there is some nuance and split within this, if we break this down into the edible waste, that's still estimated at with 7 million tonnes and valued at the thick end of £1 billion. So clearly this is significant. And this is all the more striking in a context where more than 10% of households are experiencing some form of food insecurity. The loss and the waste of resources, energy, effort is clear. And it's also incredibly frustrating for teams who don't want to be producing good food going to waste. And the opposite side is true. Of these losses, there could be a benefit of better revenue, better availability, better service to customers. And typically in resolving some of the causes of food waste, we'll be addressing some other opportunities too. So with that in mind, I'm going to test the first poll. So to get a gauge from the room, what is the main thing stopping you from taking further action on food waste? I'm hoping this works. I'm sorry, I can't see anything on my screen. So hopefully some things are coming through. I think that's probably given enough time. I'm not able to see any results at the moment, but perhaps in the background we can work out, see how they might be coming up.
I can jump in if you want, Judith. I can see it.
Oh,
so yeah, no worries. So we've got about 35%. The top answer was competing priorities. 27% of attendees say lack of internal alignment, not knowing where to start, budget or resource constraints, and then finally challenges with external partners or customers.
Fantastic, thank you. That's really valuable to know, and hopefully we'll respond to a couple of these in what's coming up next. So with that in mind then, what we have to share today is a pragmatic framework, particularly addressing some of those things of where to start. It's clearly a very complicated issue. It'd be hard to make sense of the priorities or the complexity which is in front of us. And so at Argon & Co, we've worked with our clients to develop a broad framework which follows 3 steps: to identify, prioritise and act. And it brings together operational excellence, planning, sustainability and technical expertise from the shop floor with operators, planners, engineers and quality teams through to the leadership team, because food waste is a cross-functional problem and the solutions probably will be too. And this approach, you may have seen others, and we find this is very complementary with different steps that are being taken. We aim to focus really within the 4 walls of the factory and start here and then build up, which we find sits well within things like WRAP's overarching target, measure, act approach. This is a way of breaking down that act even further in a manufacturing context. So how do we use this to help our clients break down the challenge and drive real action? So firstly, to reduce food waste, we must really understand it. So this means collecting data on all losses and waste in the process and removing all filters from this. So it may be obvious, but we need to have a full view of the picture, taking out any current KPIs that might hide standard loss or any aggregation between lines or SKUs or shifts to get a real picture. We then recommend breaking this down into root causes using some of those traditional root cause analysis approaches, 5 whys or fishbone analysis, whichever you prefer. And then we can categorize them. And these categories include those root causes, but also touch on the level of influence, which is important because this helps us prioritize effort, which we'll see in a second, but also identify who we need to be involved. So to that internal alignment piece from before. So to quickly go through these categories with a few examples, we can often start with what we call own goals, or things which may be highly visible. They may be one-offs or mishaps, so it could be to do with breakdowns, an error in ordering, or some damages or something going wrong in the factory. We actually find that these are not the main root cause of food waste, but like I say, they can be very visible. That means that they can garner a lot of attention and focus on them, which is right, because if these are happening, it's probably symptomatic of broader issues. But actually, when you look deeper into these, we can find that they're actually driven by internal constraints or more process or standard issues. So, for example, this could be to do with how giveaway is managed within the factory, or where internal standards and specifications might affect what can or can't be done. So, to go with an example from a confectionery supplier, looking at chocolate and caramel, there were questions about how much caramel, which was going to waste, could be recycled back into the chocolate. And internal standards said one thing, and operational teams were following that process. But by identifying that waste, what was causing it, doing sensory tests and working with the quality teams, it was possible to reuse the majority of that caramel and recycle it back into the chocolate. So there's some examples of working internally with different functions within the business, but equally at times to tackle those external constraints, it's important to work with customers outside also. So some examples that can come here are where a specification includes both weight and piece count attributes, which can create additional waste. Or we have an example from another client of in food to go category, where one customer in one site had a portfolio of SKUs which each contained sliced tomatoes, and there were more than 10 different thicknesses of tomatoes that were required for those different SKUs, which obviously will introduce complexity and reduce efficiency, but also increase waste. The biggest chunk of the chart you see is in the can't tackle bucket. And if we go back to that edible, inedible distinction I referenced earlier, there is an element that contributes here, but there are also opportunities for innovation or thinking differently, with examples like using citrus peels and finding a new destination for those in fragrance and scents, or working with a preserve supplier in the past, where they were discharging wastewater down the drain, but it was actually high sugar content and could go to their anaerobic digestion on site. And then around the edge, you see a fainter ring, and this is the hidden waste. So things that become normalized and invisible because they are just part of how we operate. So particularly in here, we can think about things like standard losses, where things can be hard coded into bill of materials or working routines, which can then actually become compounding. So for example, in a factory using a lot of bread as a raw material, as the work was being done in operational excellence to increase yield, the bill of material was not being updated with that, the production processes were not being updated with that increased yield, meaning that ordering did not take account, and there was more and more bread being ordered and going to waste before it even came into the factory doors. So I've done a whistle-stop tour through some of those categories of identifying our food waste there, and I think we're also going to go into a second poll on which of these has the biggest impact on food waste in your business.
I can help with this. I'll just wait for some results to come through.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so we're seeing some across all of the areas. Current majority and external constraints. Matched with internal constraints. Okay, interesting.
You can see the results now, can't you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so a fairly even split on the first three, not so much in the can't tackle, which is very pleasing. Happy to hear that. Alrighty then, so I'll move on to the next step. Once we've started to identify waste and where it comes from, then naturally we move into prioritizing, because we can't deliver everything at once, and focusing efforts will deliver the benefits that you need and sooner. So a key question here is, where is the influence to control? What is the size of the prize? But also, what is the ultimate goal? So there can be times when the focus on ROI and delivering a benefit promptly is important, but it's important to keep an eye on that overall systemic change that we want to see of driving those bigger impacts, which typically are more complex and involve more stakeholders. What we typically recommend is to try to have a suite of initiatives that cover all of the root causes and work at the kind of the smaller and the more incremental continuous improvement through to the bigger, more transformational initiatives. So having some of all of these is important, and this also galvanizes everyone around the action. Typically, where we see organizations start is cleaning up those own goals. It's where things are most in your control. It allows chalking up some quick wins, generating better understanding, and galvanizing teams behind the activity. And typically, own goals may be being worked on anyway because they will deliver other operational benefits. But this can include things like process control or working on planning accuracy, or if monitoring is not already in place, having done a lot of work to gather the data in the first place, can then lead to continuous or digitized monitoring. And this typically enables looking at internal constraints, working better within the organisation across silos, and again, building more understanding in empowering teams to tackle those bigger, more external constraints and looking outside their own organisation. There'll definitely be more on this later, so I won't speak too much about this one now. Having prioritised then, the most important thing, of course, is getting to action. Putting plans into action with typical kinds of initiatives, so rapid pilots scaling up across lines and then beyond into different sites. Making sure there's clear visibility through KPIs or dashboards and embedding those into routines within operations with the right capability building at all levels and within all teams, and ensuring strong ownership from the shop floor right to the leadership team. But there are some common pitfalls that we see in moving into action. So firstly is around when KPIs may not be aligned. I'm sure we can all think of examples where commercial teams may be seeking to innovate, meet customer needs by offering innovation to support range extensions, focus on availability and service. Technical teams may be focused on high quality and monitoring complaints, and therefore wanting to be careful with any changes being made, whereas manufacturing colleagues may be more focused on efficiency and cost. But ultimately, these KPIs need to feed up into one aligned goal to make sure that everyone is pulling in the same direction. Secondly, there can be legitimate fears about benefits being shared unequally or short-lived. And this is a real concern, especially in fast-paced cycles like we're operating in. This will differ depending on whether it's a branded relationship, whether the benefit is potentially to be delivered between a raw material supplier and the manufacturing organisation, or that organisation and their retailer customers. One of the things we see is that some benefit is better than no benefit at all, and so worth embarking on that conversation and seeing where it goes. Thirdly, beware the status quo. Whenever we hear the phrase, we've tried this before, or we've always done it like this, that should be a flag to ask the question to see if there could be something different this time, and to have that continuing challenging mindset. Next up is about using technology. Typically, some level of technology is needed to help gather the data, analyse the data, and put in place different solutions. Again, more on this later. But the important thing is to use appropriate technology for the size and scope of the challenge. So this can be something starting relatively simply with looking at forecasts and analysing for bias, which can drive in waste to the process, right through to leveraging AI to analyse complex multivariable causes of food waste, which are inherent in products like food products which come with variability in fat content in meat or size and shape of fruit or whatever it may be. And the last thing is to say that where sometimes we see this go wrong is where this is not treated as an improvement cycle. Having said we're going to prioritise and not tackle everything at once, one of the things we see is trying to take on too much and then initiatives stalling, or treating it as a one-off exercise, conducting a load of activity, which then pauses at a certain point. So really emphasising that this becomes a muscle to be practiced and repeated within the business is a way to lead to success. So this leads us on to, I think this is the last a real question for the session of what's been the most impactful action your organisation has taken to reduce food waste? Viewing the data, working with charities, labelling. Camilla, I'll let you pick that one up in a moment. Mapping trees, waste bins, some loss exercises, great. So I'm conscious of the time. There's lots of interesting points coming through here, which I hope will be shared with the rest of the attendees as well. Hoping Natalie and Luke, we can check that afterwards, so that others can see some of these ideas and things which have been impactful. I've spoken through most of these examples that we've gone through, and you'll have the slides afterwards, so I won't go through more now. But I'll just take the opportunity then to sum up of where we've got to before handing over to the rest of the team. Hopefully in the last few minutes, we've been through something which seems practical as a way to tackle waste, and 3 simple steps. Well, steps that sound simple, but actually can uncover surprises as you go through. Prioritising our efforts to focus on things that will have impact and will enable the team to build that continuous improvement cycle, and steer clear of some common pitfalls. There is an opportunity, if you would like to flag if there's a specific topic you'd like to know more about, which I believe will be happening in the background now, but that won't be shared on the screen. So please feel free to let us know some contact details if you would like. But at that stage, I will pause and get ready to hand over to Camilla from GS1. So thank you very much for listening to that part, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the next couple of sessions.
Okay, can you see my slides? Yes, I can. Yeah, okay. I think Judith had gone on mute at that point, which is not ideal when I didn't answer. Great. So thanks, Judith. Thanks for that setup. And I guess I'm setting up the next speakers really. So what I wanted to do was just introduce the programme that I'm working on, which is the transition from barcodes to QR codes, which we're doing across all of UK retail. I lead all the external engagement for that programme externally, which means I do a lot of work to raise awareness, but I also work with our early adopters and support them through pilots as well. And Cranswick is one of those early adopters, and really excited to share some of the work they've been doing today. Before we do that, I'm going to do a quick poll. It is the only poll, I promise you, which is just to ask whether you've already started the transition. So yes, no, not sure. It's okay if you're not sure, because it might have started somewhere else in your business. So yeah, it would just be good to get a steer on where people are at. Okay, I shouldn't have given them not sure option. I think everyone's like, oh no, maybe it is. We've got a few definites in there, so that's good. Well, I'll show you some names later, and perhaps you might see your organisation on there, and we'll see if there's any of those no's who turn into a not sure actually after seeing that slide. But just to introduce you to GS1, because I've worked in retail many years and I'd never heard of GS1. We are a neutral not-for-profit membership organisation, and we're most commonly known for barcodes. So we manage the standards for barcodes globally, and that means that people join us to get access or to license their barcode numbers, but we also support with lots of other standards. So anything around how you identify things or items or places within a system, how you share that data, and then and how you capture that data as well. So whether that's in a barcode, whether that's in a 2D code, whether that's in an RFID tag. We've got about 62,000 members in the UK. 3/4 of those are from retail. And when I say, from retail, it could be anyone from, the likes of Tesco, Unilever, right the way down to someone who's setting up their first 10 SKUs to sell on Amazon. So we have a huge proportion of SMEs within our membership base. And but beyond retail, we also work within healthcare. And so if you're familiar with Scan for Safety and how people are scanned around the hospital now, that's work that we're involved in, and also within construction, which is a growing area for us. But today I'm here to talk to you about the next generation of barcodes. For those of you not aware, we are transitioning to a new form of barcode, and we've been working on that programme for a couple of years now.
The original Stripey barcode has been around for over 50 years now, which is actually incredible if you think about the amount of digital transformation that has happened over the last 50 years. I mean, the internet, smartphones, so much has happened, and yet we're still relying on this original data carrier. And I think that speaks to its success. It speaks to the success of the global standard. But actually, at some point, you have to kind of take a step back and say, is this really serving the purpose we need it to anymore? And that's what our members did a few years ago. And we created a new standard, which is called the Digital Link Standard. And that's what sits behind a QR code powered by GS1. So why did we do it? Well, consumers just want to know more information than they ever have before about the products they're consuming, whether that's about whether it's safe for them to consume, what the allergens are, how it's sourced and how sustainable it is. There's a lot around social media and whether other people like this brand or not, and the reviews and ratings. So much information that people want to know about their products. But it's not just consumers, and we all have a net zero target to hit. And there's a lot of things that we need to overcome to be able to get there, particularly within retail. So it's about how can we gain greater transparency of our data, and how can we understand more about the products and how they're moving through our system and get that traceability as well, to understand the full life cycle of a product, not just the moment that it sells the till. I guess to cater to both of those things, we're seeing a lot of regulation coming as well. So you'll have seen all sorts of different regulations coming from, particularly from the EU, are the ones we hear about first, tend to be, but they're actually all over the world. And there's quite a lot, and it depends on your category as to which one will apply to you, but certainly around that traceability and transparency of ingredients, of materials, where they're from, how things are disposed of, and that all requires data. And the challenge with a barcode, the Stripey barcode today, is it only holds one number. And that really limits us in terms of how much data we can put in it. So what we needed to do was create a way of putting more data into that barcode. So what is a QR code powered by GS1? Well, it's not the same as a QR code that you might see at the train station or on a restaurant menu. Those QR codes will typically just link to one source of information on the web. What a QR code powered by GS1 can do is you can embed additional data which can be read offline. Okay, so in this example, what you can see is you've got your domain name, and that would be typically your brand domain name that you put in the URL. And then you've got what we call an application identifier. And what that's saying is that the next thing that follows in this data string is a GTIN number, or your barcode number. Once you've got that information in your QR code, it can then operate like a barcode at the till. There is one slight caveat, which is the retailer has to have enabled scanning of that barcode and interpretation of that data. But to effectively make it function in an environment where the scanners have been enabled, you just need to contain that GTIN. But the real benefits come particularly for food waste when you add additional data points. So in this example, you've got a batch number that's been added. You've also got a serial number, which is a unique number for every single instance of that item. And the last example there is an expiry date. And that's really critical when it comes to talking about food waste. Then once you've got all that information in the URL that can be read offline, you can also link to lots of different other sources of information via the web. So if you wanted to show, for example, a full farm to fork journey of a product, you could link that batch number or that serial number to data that you might be holding in another system and serve that up to either a consumer or a retailer, whoever it is who's scanning that. And the idea is once we've got these kind of information into a QR code, there's all sorts of different things that we can unlock. So this goes way beyond food waste, and that's why I wanted to just show you this slide before we dive into food waste specifically, because what's great about these QR codes is that they're a multifunctional tool, which is where when I said there might be other people in your business working on this, people start from different angles. So quite a lot of the time we see in food, people start from the angle of consumer engagement. So they might have decided to put a QR code on the pack to talk about recipe information. They might have done it to talk about a sustainability story. Quite often you'll see people doing some kind of offer or promotion, and certainly some of the competitions that you might see will be led using a QR for the digital experience. But on the left-hand side are a lot of the, I guess, the more internal benefits that can be unlocked. So things like traceability, like I said, that full farm to fork journey that you might be looking to trace. Digital product passports, if you've heard of those, they're coming from the EU around specific product categories, so often non-food, apparel, batteries, those kind of products, where they're trying to trace the full life cycle of a product, so beyond purchase and into how that product is recycled, repaired, disposed of at the end of its life as well. So waste reduction, we'll come on to that. I won't go into that in much detail now. Authentication, so that verifying that the product is the genuine version of it. So we see this a lot in apparel, but we also see it in high-risk categories. So things like medicines, baby milk, those kind of categories where you might want to authenticate that this is a genuine version of that product, that it hasn't been, it's not been counterfeited in any way. And then there's a whole bunch of things around returns management and how we can automate recalls and markdowns as well. And this is the slide I was talking about around the first movers that we're seeing globally. So on the right-hand side are people who've signed our global commitment to transitioning. So you can see some big names on there, L'Oreal, Lidl, Carrefour, P&G, Nestle. But then on the left-hand side are brands that haven't actually signed the global commitment, but they have started moving. So if you go into their stores, you will see QR codes, you will see some significant adoption of this technology now by these brands. But let's have a look at food waste specifically, because that's what we're here to talk about today. There's a number of different ways this supports on the food waste journey, and there's probably going to be more than this as well. But let's start with what we're seeing at the moment. So the first one is preventing the sale of out-of-date products. And when I say preventing the sale of out-of-date products, I should probably add automating recalls as part of that process. So at the moment, we have very little visibility of use-by dates. It is not recorded at point of sale. When you scan a barcode through a till, you just know that you've sold an item. You don't know what the use-by date of that item was, and you don't know what the batch of that item was. By having this data embedded in the barcode means that you can catch that and you can start to automate that process of restricting the sale of that product. You can improve the forecasting. So again, if you have that visibility, you know whether you've sold product that's going out of date tomorrow, or whether you've sold the freshest product and actually you've got a lot more stock that's going to go out of date. Having that visibility increases the forecast accuracy, and it means that we can reduce the waste by how much stock is going into store in the first place. Automating markdowns. So we're seeing this example that you can see there is actually from Mercadona in Spain, where they had a really complex markdown process, and actually by embedding the weight and the price into the QR code as well, they've managed to massively reduce the amount of workload that goes into their markdown process. But it also means that you can do much more like strategic markdown. So you can start to think about marking down less earlier, and potentially using digital SELs and doing that automatically rather than needing yellow labels. Consumer education. So there's a whole piece, as we know, around how consumers are wasting food in the home. So using this QR and the fact that it can be scanned by a consumer to help engage them, help give them ideas for how they could use that waste. We're seeing some really advanced apps and things around tracking the use by dates of everything that's in your fridge, so that you can manage that more effectively and get alerts and be told when something's going out of date. So there's a lot of opportunity in how we might be able to engage consumers in food waste reduction as well. And then recycling and making sure we're giving people accurate information about how to recycle that's located to their area as well. So the fact that you can effectively geolocate someone who's scanning a QR code means that you can serve them location-specific content. And this is the stat that I think has driven a lot of the movement around the world, actually. So this is Woolworths in Australia, and they adopted 2D barcodes. So in their example, they started with Data Matrix, which doesn't have the kind of consumer engagement angle to it, but it will do a lot of the other stuff. And they reduce their food waste by 40%. And they improve their productivity by 21% by adopting these 2D barcodes on their fresh produce. So some really impressive stats there. And we know it's going to vary dependent on the retailer, dependent on the processes that they currently have in place and what their current food waste looks like. But some really strong statistics as to how beneficial this potentially can be. And then I imagine many of you will have heard of the programme that's been going on in Tesco. So Tesco have been really focused on, again, how they can use these variable QR codes to improve their traceability, to improve their compliance, to prevent the sale of out-of-date products, and to forecast more accurately as well around food waste. So there's a lot of different things they're looking at. They're also looking at how they might use it for the consumer journey as well. And like I said, the guys from Cranswick here, that's their sausages that are being scanned. So it's going to be really great to share with you the journey they've been on to try and bring some of these opportunities to life. But the thing I just wanted to flag before we go on to their presentation, because it gets a bit technical and it depends on what category you're in as to what your likely use case is and therefore what your likely implementation looks like. So on the left-hand side is what we typically see in an ambient category, in a sort of a category where foods have got longer shelf life or it's non-food. These are what we call a static barcode. It has just the GTIN number in it. So it does the consumer engagement and it goes beep at the till. But that's pre-printed on the packaging. It's part of the artwork process. And it's a very different process to the process that the guys from Cranswick are going to talk about. The work that we've been doing on fresh produce in Tesco is to embed additional data points. So we've been embedding use by dates and batch numbers, which means that QR code is getting printed on the production line. So every single item is getting a fresh print on the production line using the coding and marking technology. So I just wanted to highlight that bit before they go on to speak, that the specific implementation will differ depending on what you're trying to achieve. But if you're trying to achieve this kind of activation for food waste and how you might trace your product better through the supply chain, then this is the type of printing that you need to be thinking about. So that's it from me. There's probably, if you haven't heard about this before, that's probably sparked a lot of questions. You can get back in contact with me. You can follow me on LinkedIn using that QR code. You can send me an email and I will definitely follow up with you individually to go through things in more time, more detail if you'd like to. I'm going to hand over to Clive and Will from Cranswick.
Hi, good morning everybody. Just want to say that we value the opportunity to work in this sector and collaborate with everybody and the associations regarding sort of food waste basically. I think as Camilla said, a lot of our research we're going to just impart on you today is very top line. So if you want any further deep dives or one-to-one, we're sort of happy to share that with you. My name's Clive Stevens. I'm Head of Research and Development for Cranswick PLC. I'll take you through Cranswick in a minute. I've been 52 years in the food and meat industry, primarily with Cargill International, Sainsbury's, and then latterly Cranswick. Well,
and yeah, morning everybody. So as Will Miles, I'm the Cranswick Group R&D Manager. A bit less than Clive in the industry. I've been with Cranswick for just over 10 years in kind of technical food safety and technical implementation, and then latterly the last couple of years in the R&D side of the business. And it'd be great to show you what we've been up to.
Super. So those who don't know about Cranswick, we're primarily producing pigs and poultry and all the derivatives that come from that, really. We've got 23 factories. We're totally vertically integrated and we've got hundreds of farms. in general, we supply most of the retailers, and we've probably got about upwards of 4 million packs out in the supply chain on a daily basis. Our research primarily is about agricultural, food manufacturing, sustainability, and our second nature sustainability strategy is at the heart of everything we sort of do. Our research, we've got a heavy slant on food waste reduction. We're also looking at quantitative quality improvement, and then that can also look at shelf life extension, ultimately improving efficiency, and where possible, trying to get a return on investment. But I think the key thing that everybody said to date is what we've got to remember is we're all consumers, all of us are consumers. And this problem that we've got on food waste, you've heard some of the figures already, sort of 10 million tonnes of food waste. So I think we're all attacking it, but we sort of can do better, if you like. Our research sort of suggests that we can reduce our food waste sort of contribution that we're putting into the supply chain really on a daily basis. Now, just to make a couple of things clear, as I think Judith alluded to, in our 23 factories, with second nature strategy, most of the things that Judith alluded to are already happening in the operation. Will and I and the team and the R&D team are really focusing more on the supply chain. Like I said, we're vertically integrated, so we can see from literally pigs being born right through to the consumer fridge. And a lot of our research really is about getting visibility every step of the supply chain, really. Now, there's clearly not one silver bullet. We think there's about 10 areas of research that we believe we've got sort of nailed down, really. So the areas that we're sort of focusing on is ingredients, clearly with ultra-processed foods being top of the pile at the minute in terms of most concerns in food manufacturing. That means potentially by taking out food safety hurdles, we could limit shelf life. So we're looking at ingredients and natural replacers there, and also sort of working with natural cultures. We see the packaging. We transport these 4 million packs through the supply chain every day, and we are doing an inordinate amount of research into the actual packet. So that could be seal integrity, gas mixes, etc., etc. And then packaging, we're looking at active packaging, intelligent packaging, and sort of tagging solutions, intelligent solutions that can track every one of our packs through the supply chain. And then latterly, obviously looking at the supply chain in detail.
Okay, so as Clive mentioned, so what we're going to talk to you about today is the project of GS1 and test being driven by Tesco, which is moving to from linear barcodes to dynamic QR codes. We, as Clive kind of mentioned, this is part of our waste reduction priorities, and we see it as kind of the end point of our supply chain, of how we can affect the overarching supply chain and how it trickle down to overall reduce food waste within our sector. So in terms of where we started and where we've ended up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey of where we started and how we brought this technology into the business. As Clive kind of mentioned, in R&D, we are there as a kind of test bed where we will do small scale kind of proof of concepts. to prove technology, quite the early phases of the technology design and development. So Tesco actually came to us back in 2024 with the question, is it possible? Can you physically do it? That's where we kind of came involved in the department to prove it can be done before scaling. So as mentioned before, this is moving from the linear or the traditional old style barcode to the dynamic QR code printed on pack, which we believe will unlock data transparency between manufacturer, retailer, and therefore reduce food loss and unsold food. So where do we start really? So across the business we have a few Tesco sites, key Tesco sites, some that are dedicated to Tesco supply. And we had to firstly understand what actually are our hardware capabilities. So can we do it with what we've got already? So we did effectively a gap analysis across our key supplying sites, working out what hardware we've got there, and understand the potential costs. When we're talking about R&D, we often play in areas where we need to work with low cost solutions and try and scale accordingly. So what we established was that we could do it with our existing hardware, which was great, and would have limited costs up front to be able to do a pilot and trial it. We quickly established that we would be looking at doing front of pack printing only, so where the existing use by date is printed. We ran a trial at our Cranswick convenience food Milton Keynes site, which is a sliced cooked meats facility, cooked ham, in this case garlic and herb cooked ham. That's because they already had some element of hardware in place that we could utilise. We knew they could print QR codes, and we also knew that we could test it in an environment which is a high speed line, high throughput, and have multiple coders, etc. We had additionally a system already in place that could provide the information into the QR code, which is important. I'll come on to in a bit. We did back in March 2025, seems like a long time ago now, but we did a pilot trial, a 2-week trial on the Tesco garlic and herb ham into 2 depots. We decided on this particular product due to the kind of volume scale, not too big. Obviously, exposure is a key, but we want to make sure we did it right. And we also chose 2 depots to again keep it quite confined. As you can see on the pictures on the screen, this did involve creating a new artwork design whereby we have a separate box that is located next to where we print the normal use by date box to give us that extra space to print. And we did start our journey with dynamic QR code plus 1D barcode, so effectively dual coding. And this enables you to effectively still pay for the product with both systems, just in case one wasn't quite up to scratch. We had a few challenges, as you do with any kind of R&D project and any kind of hard innovation. It doesn't always go right first time, and that's one of our kind of biggest learnings. Really, is how to utilize your hardware to get good print quality. So we did have some elements of smudging and clarity on kind of first go, and what we've learned through a partnership kind of with GS1 and Tesco really is that we are on a learning journey together. We do 2-way feedback, all parties really to help and get the ultimate best print we can. And that did include things like artwork redesigns to make sure we had enough space around the QR code, looking at the actual string of information that we're printing in there, making sure it's not too long, and increasing that speed of scan activity. Slide. So we also took some learnings that it's okay printing them, but you need to also make sure that you've got the right information in them. And this is where we had to effectively onboard and upskill our existing label verification providers. So these are a couple named here, our key label verification suppliers that we use on the screen. And these effectively are placed at the end of our production lines that will scan each pack and each QR code and verify that the actual data that we're entering into it is correct. What we don't want to happen is we print and put a wrong code on the product, but be it for paying for the product and or the traceability information such as the use by date, batch code, etc. They've been very supportive of our journey together with Tesco and have actually invested quite a lot of their time into developing their own kit as well. What we can't do is we can't go out and replace a lot of existing kit that we spent quite considerable money on, and we need to bring them on the same kind of path we're on as well. We did kind of start off with kind of manual app-based phone checks to make sure that we could have the right QR code details in there, but this adds some extra robustness. In addition, it's not just about checking the actual data inside the QR code is there. You also need to make sure the quality is there. Quality of the barcode is imperative, really, because if you want to have especially when you talk about point of sale and using it as a payment method, you need the quality to a high grade enough that allows the quick speed of scan. So we did employ a quality verification tool. It's called Axicon, and for those of you that are interested, that can grade that barcode. We learned a lot about printer orientation, printer settings. Again, we're working with one of our kind of main printer suppliers, sort of hand in hand, to take all the learnings to understand capabilities, printing before thermoforming, printing after thermoforming. Lots of different learnings we have kind of taken through doing this exercise. At the end of the day, there's not a kind of blueprint for doing this out there. We are building that as a business internally, and also, as I say today, we're obviously sharing what we've kind of done to the wider industry as well, just to make sure everybody's informed. We also identified that you need a robust database connection to feed the data. So we're quite fortunate in the sense we already had a pre-existing one, and our suppliers can provide one. But what you do need to make sure is that you put the right data in. Otherwise, you end up with obviously knock-on challenges further down. Learnings about ink and the opaqueness of the box. I could go on. We've got many more learnings that we've taken from doing this kind of proof of concept trial and scale up. I think I've already talked about the speed of scan at till, but we did work quite closely with GS1 in relation to the QR code structure and Tesco. So from proof of concept to full launch. So as Camilla showed on screen, on sausages, we have launched on sausages in November 2025. So we got really good feedback from Tesco from the initial proof of concept trial, which we then effectively passed on all those learnings to our sister site, who make the Tesco sausages. And that included onboarding suppliers and building databases and all the things that come with that to do that. But because we'd already had that kind of head start, it made that transference to the other site that bit quicker and that bit smoother. I'll put just in terms of some quite more specific details in terms of what that actually enabled, but it did include some extra costs for things like networking of coders and purchasing of some extra kit as well. So we've had to again upskill that sister site on the benefit of doing this and the wider piece of meeting the kind of GS1 2027 targets for the wider industry. This is I'll say the similar image to what Camilla showed in terms of what we have successfully managed to do, which is having the dynamic QR code printed in the same box as the use by date. Tesco's obviously really happy with where we've got to so far. We're now in a place whereby we will be looking to take off the traditional old style barcode and use this as the predominant method of paying for the product. as well as all the dynamic marketing information that we can deliver. And we're now finally onto the point where we are looking to launch on other product categories this year, which will soon be hitting your shelves, which should be exciting to see. I think I did have some final further considerations for anybody that's on this journey. And this is some of the bits and pieces that we are working on at the moment, which is now validating things like the speed of production line, how that is affected, how changeover speeds are affected. Once you start employing this kind of technology at scale, these are the kind of things you need to build and understand more clearly before rolling out even further. I hope that was useful. That's all we've got for today. Again, any questions, please let us know. Really happy to kind of share our learnings.
A massive thank you to Clive and Will for what you've shared there, and thank you also to Camilla for teeing that up nicely and explaining a bit more about the background to this exciting change coming. Natalie and Luke, I have to apologise. We've all got so excited talking about food waste that we have left very little, almost no time for questions. So I really apologise for that. I can't spot any in the chat yet. That might just be, I don't know if that's an admin thing or if there are no questions. Maybe what I can suggest is if there are any questions to log them and we can try to respond to them offline. But perhaps if there's anything urgently, anything burning that comes to mind, please do flag that now.
I think given time, if anyone has any questions, you can send them over to me. And then I'm just having a look. Oh, one's just come through. So does Axicon integrate with existing Demanco, sorry, I'm pronouncing this wrong, I think, labeling, verification, hardware and cameras, or line space needed for additional unit? That's
I can answer that question. At the moment, it doesn't, but we are working with our current OEM, original equipment manufacturers, to embedding quality grading within the same bit of kit.
Great, thank you. I think if there's any further questions, then I'll put my email in the chat. I think most people have it. Oh, it's off. Most people have my email. We're going to do an aftercare email as well, but we can include any questions that come through in that as well, if you send them over to me.
Well, just a final note, thank you to the FDF, Natalie and Luke. Thank you to Camilla from GS1, and thank you to Clive and Will from Cranswick for sharing so much with us today. I hope you've taken something away from this last hour. And if there are any further questions or follow-up, please do get in touch afterwards. I'm wishing you all the best with the actions that you're taking now to go out and drive impact on reducing food waste. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Bye.